Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Spark Reactions podcast, where we talk about religion, philosophy, spirituality, and more. Video is called Become Who You're Afraid to Be, the philosophy of Carl Jung.
Most people are afraid to fully be themselves. They're afraid to embrace the parts of themselves that might be regarded as unacceptable, because embracing these unacceptable parts makes them feel uncomfortable. So to escape this uncomfortableness, they divide themselves into two halves, conscious and unconscious. In the conscious half, they construct an ideal image of themselves, an image formed out of the bits and pieces of their past that they deem as good and acceptable. And as a result, in the unconscious half, they repress the parts of themselves that they view as bad and unacceptable.
We're all guilty of this.
In Jungian psychology, this repressed part of the personality is called the shadow. And unless the shadow is integrated into the personality, a person can never reach their fullest potential. Instead, one will always remain incomplete, fractured, and partial, living a life of regret rather than the full life that could have been. Imagine, for example, that I've solved a few equations and convinced myself that I'm a great mathematician. I might meet a few friends and they tell me that they have a math club. They gather every weekend and try to have a crack at math's most difficult problems. This scares me because if I join, I'll no longer get to be the great mathematician that I've convinced myself I am. Instead, I'll be a concrete person with actual strengths and weaknesses. And in this scenario, there are two possible actions I can take. The first action is to run from my shadow and let it grow. I refuse to join the math club and realize my own weaknesses as a mathematician. I get to cling to the ideal image of myself as a great mathematician, but as a result, I lose the opportunity to actually become one. The second action is to...
That reminds me of something that I always thought about. This is before I really knew the shadow and all that. I was in my maybe 24 years old, and I was on a cricket team. And every week, I had it in my head that I'm the best hitter out there. And I was making these excuses. Oh, the ball did that, and I was making all these excuses. And I remember exactly where I was when I said to myself, wait a minute, maybe I'm not that good. I've only just told myself that. And now we're seeing just how bad I am at hitting. And I remembered feeling, I don't know if like broken for like 10 minutes because I said a truth to myself that I refused to see, but it was blatantly true. And I always, and the path that I've been on the last almost 20 years since then was, okay, well, that wasn't so bad. I rather know myself than pretend, because I don't like pretending. If I wanted to pretend, I'd become an actor. The first time you do it, it's like that first initial crack to the ego. Yeah.
With Carl Jung, I'm pretty familiar with it. This is kind of a nice way of introducing you to the shadow, I will say.
come into contact with my shadow and integrate it. I join the math club and realize that I'm not the great mathematician that I thought I was. In the short term, this hurts. I discover that I'm not very good at geometry, but also that I excel in differential equations. I become measured with my colleagues. I have an actual place and rank among other mathematicians. In reality, I realize I'm not the great mathematician I thought I was, but now I open up the possibility of actually becoming one. I can actually improve my skills and rank. In the long run, this ends up being the best decision I've ever made. See, in a way, we often prefer to be pure potential. We convince ourselves we could be whatever we want to be, but don't actively work to actually be something. We just comfort ourselves with the idea that we could be something if we wanted to. This is because when we work towards something, we start feeling...
What he just said there can be described as ignorance is bliss. You pretend you're the best, and you're satisfied.
You live in your bubble.
Yeah, a lot of people do it.
our weight in the world. We're measured and ranked. We're quantified and actual. And this actual reality is often less pleasurable to live in than our ideal fantasy. But it's real, not a fantasy. And reality can be improved. But a life of fantasy always ends in tragedy. The path to self-improvement starts with self-acceptance. Only by embracing and integrating our shadow, by accepting the ugly parts of ourselves, by becoming who we're afraid to be, can we reach our fullest potential. But if we reject our shadow, if we pick and choose the parts of our past, personality, and behavior that we like, and repress the parts of ourselves we fear, we become incomplete and partial. And instead of living a full, whole life, we live one full of regrets. But it's up to you to decide. In Jungian terms, will you embrace your shadow or reject it? Would you rather fail in actuality or succeed in mere hypotheticals? And if you're interested in accessing more insights from great thinkers, I highly recommend checking out this week's sponsor, Wondrium. You may have heard me mention the Great Courses Plus before.
Look, it takes a certain, one of the things I've figured out is it takes a certain level of fearlessness to say, I'm not that good at this. And or I was wrong. And a lot of people that have strong feelings of pride, they'll never admit to being wrong, and they think that makes them weak. But of course, it makes they think it makes them stronger, but it just makes them appear weaker.
What you're talking about is like the concept of somebody going postal. They hold all the
Yeah.
anger, all the tension in, but eventually, or like a volcano. Let's make it more positive. Like a volcano, all the pressure builds up and it's
1000%.
gonna burst.
Yeah.
So yeah, you kind of have to do that. You kind of have to
You don't have a choice.
learn about yourself, or you're gonna explode eventually.
That's
And
I
I've
think
had anger issues. I know very well about exploding.
I like my anger issues. I channel them well because I'm working on my shadow.
So I didn't want to cut this video in the beginning
Uh-huh.
because I said it's a good intro to the whole Carl Jung shadow thing. I'm familiar with Carl Jung. He's probably my favorite psychologist.
Yeah.
And if you've seen the earlier video, you should go watch it. I mentioned that I wanted to go to school for psychology. But watch the old video. Anyway, so the point about the shadow, that's an interesting way of taking it when it comes to fear with work and different things that you want to succeed and be good at. I never even really took it that way. Because for me, I've always had a little bit of a fearlessness, maybe a recklessness in that I kind of want to do things I'm not good at. Unlike most people.
The same way.
Like
Yeah.
a lot of people always just want to be good, from what I find. Because I've talked to people and I'm like, why do you always want to be good at something? It's more fun to learn things. But that's just how I'm wired. I take the shadow in a deeper sense. Like, you really look in yourself, like, why do you personally do certain things that may not be beneficial? Or maybe you look at yourself in a way that is not necessarily, I'm the good person. Like, you have bad traits, everybody does. And it's those bad traits that you have to learn to accept, not just know what they are, but you have to learn to accept why they are.
There's a saying that I think most people should adopt, and it's, you're the hero in some people's story, and you're the villain in some people's story. That's just the way it is. All right, thank you for watching this video. Become who you're afraid to be. Thank you for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, and comment any videos you would like for us to make a video on. Thank you.